All right, so I've got a pretty fun recording here for you. I've also got some, quick highlight on some of the recent changes. I've added exclude to the deck, and I took out moat in the abyss. Basically, there are in a format where even the control decks have a general. I think exclude might be a kind of a mandatory play. But considering that we don't have, since the tuck counters don't work anymore, you need a way to answer generals doesn't cost you cards, at least in the beginning, before you can gorge on cards. So exclude's a really good way to do that, um, just to buy the time without losing card advantage. And I also added, speaking of gorging on cards, I added Thirst for Knowledge, which it's not incredible in here per se, because a lot of times you don't really want to be discarding artifacts. But on the other hand, there are plenty of times where you're perfectly happy to discard a couple of lands and turn them into actual um, said artifacts or turn them into spells, because lands are low priority other than kind of like getting you going. They're not that important, because you plan to orb most games. So, um, okay, this is cool. I was wondering this guy. So this guy decided to. Well, let's go take a look at the rest of the game. I'll touch on some of the other changes as well. Basically, they involve running cruise and dig. Thirst for knowledge is another way to power these up. So it's kind of like, and so is exclude, in the sense that you're gonna be perfectly willing to just exclude to dig a little deeper, and then later that's gonna provide mana for you. So this is more of that, like, how do I deal with the fact that I can't talk generals, kind of logic. So anyway, these also capitalize on the change with the preordaining ponders, but can be a little risky with the confidants, and of course, if my opponent mana drains them, it could be pretty horrible. But I think in general, the drawback is minimal for the game. So let's take a look at these games that I was alluding to. So basically, this was just I played a few games today. This week I've played a number of games. Most of which have worked out pretty well. I will touch on the loss and then the win, and they're kind of the most recent win, and they're kind of connected, as well as that comment that just popped up on my screen. So here's the loss, and it's going to be a pretty quick game. This commander is almost not relevant. It's this thing, Marin of Clan-Tooth, whatever. So I keep a hand where I've got Tomb, Soul Ring, and any colored mana. I need one mana, one black, one white, or one blue. It's all good, right? Artifact mana will work, lands will work, anything will work. I decide I don't want to mulligan aggressively. I'm just going to keep, it's a slightly risky keep, but the risk is pretty low. There are 33 cards that I could draw that would allow me to play something in my hand. 33 either color-producing lands or color-producing artifacts that are castable with what I have. Plus, and then that list also includes top, because I assumed top would dig me out of this as well. But I'm going to go ahead and save you a little bit of time here on this game. Bottom line is I don't draw land, I don't draw land, I don't draw land, and I don't draw land, and finally I just say, okay, bad enough. I don't know what my next, I don't know when my next, like, I mean, it didn't even have to be land, but I don't know when my next mana producing, color producing card was, but I was fine for a good long while if I would have just drawn any. But I decided, okay, so that was a bad experience. So I play a few games, and then I play this guy named Shoal 76. And so, against this guy, I'll show you why that first game is important here in a moment. I've got this hand. Now this hand, if I draw, of course, a fetch land is a really good hand, because I'll be able to tithe into multiple lands, and then I can vindicate a land and then strip my land that I've got Force of Will going. But I just had a risky keep earlier, so I'm not like compelled to keep this. This isn't like it's not a Soul Ring draw, right? So I take a mulligan, no problem, and a mulligan into this, and now any mana, castable mana source would allow me to sack the map, and then I could go get blue, and then from there I could mystical into tithe if I wanted, or I could do whatever I wanted at that point to develop my board. But again, like for the same reason that I mulliganed earlier, and just having kept and not had things work out, I decided now I'm just going to mulligan anyway. Plus, and this is the nice thing about having all the extra card drawing, I can mulligan more aggressively because I can recover more quickly. Um, so I figured, it's fine. And look, I mulliganed to basically the exact same hand. Now I think, I can't remember, the initial hand have counterspell mystical? I don't remember, but the second hand did. The third hand did. No land again. No land again. There's that mystical tutor showing up again. No land again. No land again. But it's got a soul ring, so let's keep it. So I keep, and I put future sight on the bottom of my deck. And my opponent's got a soul ring, so I don't even really have a super good advantage. Plus he's playing 5 colors, and my first land, which was awesome. My top card was land. I'm not complaining. But then again, it was Urborg, so I just fixed his mana situation. So now he's got this Descendant's Path, which means that if he has it appears he's playing a full-on Sliver deck. So if he has a Sliver in play, then every upkeep he gets to reveal the top card. If it's a Sliver, he gets to cast it for free. Otherwise, put it on the bottom of his deck. That seems a little ridiculous, but I can't do about it. So okay, I kind of felt like giving up, but I had a Soul Ring, so I'm not going to give up. A good Soul Ring Mystical Tutor. And it turns out he's not playing like a serious deck. He's playing some kind of Sliver jank. So that means I actually have a chance. And look there's that Mystical Tutor again. So I don't know what was going on with the Shuffler, but top decking, I drew a land for the Soul Ring on turn 1 and a land on turn 2. So he gets a free sack to draw a card effect, which is pretty unfortunate. A free card that draws cards. But on the plus side, he's just playing more janky Slivers that basically do nothing. So I can mystical here. Question is what to get. It really was kind of torn because it's kind of like if I mystical tutor for demonic, then I can draw the demonic and cast it for necropotence, and then I have to draw any land, but any land will be black because of the herbal. At which point I could necro. But I was looking at I'm going to take a lot of damage, and I'm not sure. First off, I would have to draw land right away, and I'm not sure that all the damage I'm going to take and the luck factor there, and then I have to necro my way out of it. It just didn't seem like it was going to work out, and I wasn't sure what else I could get. I won't have enough mana to treasure cruise here, because cruise, even with the tutor, it's only -1, so it would still cost 7, and I've only got 4. So that's not really an answer for me. I can't get Jace. It would just die pretty quick anyway. So ultimately, I settle on Fact or Fiction. And because I'd like to hit land, and I can't bluff, I go ahead and just cast the Fact or Fiction now. Revealing this pile here. And so now you see what the opponent was saying earlier when I was talking to you, and the opponent sent me, this current opponent sent me a text. He said he felt sorry for me, so he made piles of 5 and 0. Fortunately, I appreciate it, but on the other hand, it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if he had made a real pile. I kind of don't really like it when people I appreciate the thought, but I don't really like it when people do stuff like that because it kind of messes up. I don't get to find out, can I win the game without help? And I'm already pretty confident that I can win a game with help. But at any rate, I'm still going to take the pile of 5, and I'm certainly not going to be nice to him if I have the opportunity. I'm not going to be a jerk, but I am going to try to win the game. So I take 5. And it doesn't look like the cards I took. It doesn't. It looks like I could have. Excuse me. and almost certainly, and in all probability, likely could have thrown away some of the cards in my hand here and still been mostly well off. I mean, the thing to do for him was to put flats and Power Stone in one pile and all the rest in the other pile. That would have been the nastiest split for me to deal with, because I would have had to take the mana. But anyway, at least Fact or Fiction also powers up Colosseum. And Colosseum's a little weird since I've added the dredge cards, in the sense that it can be turned off by the dredge cards, but at the same time, you can use the Colosseum and find a dredge card or two, and it's basically adding 3 mana. You know, it's 3 more or 4. It's 4 more cards that you can excuse me, dredge away, which means it's possible to have just enough cards to like cruise, and then you sack the Colosseum, you know, and find it, and then you cruise into dig, or you know, vice versa. Excuse me. So he's right now he's just dealing. I mean, he's dealing a pretty good chunk of damage, but it's not super fast. And the card he revealed with off of the Descendant was a Feto Dredging, so that goes to the bottom of his deck. This one we know about, and this went to the bottom of his deck. So at present, I don't know what the 2 cards are in his hand. Descendant only tells me something if it pops into play. It doesn't tell me anything if the card doesn't come into play. So I draw a land here, which is really nice. Because I don't know, he could Mnemonic Sliver cards back into his hand, but then that's reducing damage by a decent bit, since all of his creatures do an extra 1 from this. And it could matter, so I'm going to go ahead and twist whatever's in his hand. I don't really have the luxury of sitting on a Force of Will, even though it's probable he could cast his commander next turn, and of course I would want to keep that off the board, but it's just not anything I can do something about, because I need to dig my way out of the hole that I'm in. I need to continuously be looking for extra cards. So my twist for 2, and I actually hit card that doesn't matter, and then Telekinetic Sliver. So he would have had an opposition effect if he would have found an extra blue. And that's not beatable, so it was actually a good thing there. Had I been him, I may have, if I were him, I would have probably sacrificed the least important Vigilant Sliver and drawn a card and hoped to protect the Telekinetic, hoped that the 2 random cards didn't hit it. And that's actually something I thought about before I twisted. I thought about twisting for 1 extra in case he wanted to do a sack in response. But I decided not to, because I'm trying to manage my life total here as well, and I kind of want to fetch a tap land at the end of his turn. And if he didn't bite, then in this case he didn't, then it wouldn't really have been that big of a deal for me. So he bottomed another card. He bottomed Distant Melody. Wait a minute. Yeah, he bottomed Distant Melodies. So I was misunderstanding the card as I was playing too. I kind of thought, I don't know why, but I thought it was optional. So I was thinking that Distant Melodies was probably in his hand, and then I was going to lose. So we didn't cast it. I was a little confused, but of course, we know that was a error in thinking there. I'm not super familiar with this card, but you know, now that I've faced it, I don't expect to make the same mistake again. Anyway, it was a mistaken thought, but it wasn't. It didn't affect things too badly. So he sends the team. Of course, I'm not going to block, and I am going to get captured there, as I said. So, trying to manage the life total here. And so I get a free island. So, in the land tax, this isn't. At this point, I don't see any way that I can not lose this game, but I'm going to keep trying, of course. So what I decided to do is I decide that I'm going to have to force will whatever he... This is a demonic tutor, so I'm going to have to force will whatever he's going to get. We know he's going to get something. And then I need to generate... I need to get dredge mana so that I can use the Colosseum, hopefully, and find something, at least at some point. The flats is 1, which will put me at 1 card in the graveyard, which will put me at 5, and the Force of Will will put me at 6. So I only need 1 more card at that point. I can always chump block with Confidant if I have to. Because what I'd really like to do, excuse me, is land tax 3 cards and then Colosseum those 3 cards into those 3 lands into real cards. So when I work it all out, that means I can't afford to play the Worn Power Stone because I won't be able to Force a Will, and Force a Will seems critical. It also means I need to play the land tax, and since I'm going to play the land tax and I have a fetch land that I can fail to search with, I'm going to go ahead and play my land. And the idea here is that I can cast the Force of Will without the fetch, because I played the snow-covered land in play. And if he decides to play a land, like so that he can do more searching, then I don't have to fail the fetch, and I'm better off. If he doesn't, then for only 1 life, I'm going to end up with the same result. I'm still going to land tax, but I paid 1 life to give him the chance to misplay, basically, is what I did. So, and I lost a card in hand, but I know that I'm going to get 3 basic lands anyway, so the card in hand is not super relevant to me. I would rather, okay, so he tucked the forest. I'd rather have the opportunity to, oh yeah, I was commenting on how insane my mulligan was. I forgot that I actually had land in the second one, so it was actually only 5 hands with non-lands, but. Alright, so he uses the Sliver Overlord to search, and he fetches up a Gemhide Sliver, which is a real bummer for me because Gemhide Sliver is going to let him, now he can search more frequently, and of course it gives him more mana to recover if I try to sweep the board. But it's not such a bummer that I'm going to use a Force of Will on it. If I can hold the Force of Will, I'm going to, of course. Man, this cough is a nightmare. It just won't go away. Anyway, so he sends the team. I lose half my life. Now the only bad thing here is that I won't say the only bad thing, but a bad thing about not using the Force of Will here is that I can't. It's making it hard for me to get. It's making it harder for me to get threshold for Colosseum. So anyway, he fetches up a Blade Sliver. So this is just strictly like a front-end crusade for his creatures. And since I know that I have to, I can't, countering that's not super strong for me. I really need to sweep the board anyway. But if I don't, and I have to block, I'm going to block the Gemhide, of course, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 damage gets through. Since I'm going to sack here, that puts me at 1, and I can use this for black so I don't have to take damage off of it. Basically, Oloro is going to put me up 2 more life. So basically, if I hit a spell that's too expensive with Dark Confidant, I could die during his attack phase, which means I'll have to play my commander, which isn't the worst thing in the world, because I could chump and then maybe deter some attacks and stuff. So having worked out exactly how the math goes, if nothing good happens next turn, I go ahead and just let the Blade Sliver happen. Of course, I failed the fetch, as I said. I need to attack. That part's pretty obvious. I'm going to stack it so that I tax before I Confidant, because I don't want to accidentally Confidant into one of the 3 basics that are left. And luckily I flipped Preordain, which is really nice, off of the Confidant because I'm trying to manage my life total so carefully. But then with my draw phase, I find myself in Necropotence. It doesn't seem like Necro is going to be particularly good this game, but, you know, because I'm getting the crap kicked out of me, basically. But that Preordain definitely comes in handy, because that actually makes it easier for me to get Threshold. And look what I Preordained into. And I'm also, by the way, so excited. I love having these extra blue cards has really made this deck so much better. Just these cheap fixers. Anyway, so I peered into this Enlightened Tutor Imperial Seal. So I would really like to tutor for humility. Moat's not in the deck anymore. Although he could just tutor up the thing that gives all creatures flying anyway, and I would have had to counter that, and then I don't have a boom spell set. Like, it would have been too hard to pull off anyway, I think. So I don't really mind the lack of moat. But Imperial Seal here is huge, so I play a land, um, and the reason it's huge is not only is it a tutor, but it's also my 7th card in graveyard, which means Colosseum is about to turn on. So you can look at the list, but I think everyone here in my channel most likely knows which card I'm going to get. It's cool though that I don't have to reveal it. It's not Mystic Tutor. So I let him do his path first, and he shows me island he didn't have to draw. Man, so bad. So, the right play for him is to attack, and then his guys have vigilance. So if I have any tricks, he can respond to the tricks by then tapping his guys for mana. He can activate his commander, and he can sack his guys and draw a bunch of cards. I mean, he's going to refill his hand here pretty quick. But he doesn't make the right play. He futzes around with Soul Ring. They're trying to figure out what excuse me, what exactly he wants to do and what does he want to tutor for. That cough is devastating. So I guess after thinking about it for a little while, he decides he's going to go get a very expensive card that just kills me more. A win more card is fine with me. And he's not only is he going to get it, but he's going to play it before combat, which is totally awesome. And that takes up even more of his mana. So this worked out really well. The funny thing is, like, the Vigilant Sliver is basically useless against me in all but this particular situation where he's got Gem Hide and then activation or sack effects. And it's unfortunate that he does because he decides to turn all of his guys sideways here. Well, he would if they didn't have Vigilance. And then he wouldn't have any mana to respond to my play, but whatever. I'm still going to make the play. So I sack Colosseum, and of course, as you surely figured out, I went with Terminus. So I draw 3, and now I have to discard 3 cards to Colosseum. So I decide I'm going to pitch Pain Land because I have Necro. Basic Land because I only need 1 land to hit my next land drop. And then when I work out exactly how the next turn is going to play out, I'm actually not going to need the Worn Power Stone. I'm going to try to play as many cards as possible next turn. And Worn Power Stone just doesn't curve properly, so he's burying all of his creatures. I bury my Dark Confidant. And so I'm looking at, like, if my next draw is a dud, I get to play a land, cast the Lantern, cast the Necro, refill my hand. So that's why I like the Worn Power Stone had to go. So I'm not going to shuffle with tax. I don't want to draw I don't want to draw a Dark Confidant. I'll just leave him on the bottom of the deck. There's no other lands to fetch. And I draw a fantastic top deck. Teferi is great because he only costs 1 mana to play in this situation, as you can see. Only spent 1 mana to play. And that lets me go ahead and just cast myself a Necropotence and refill my hand. And now I have a chance. Although he still has a ton of mana and he gets 3 cards off to send me. Potentially. He has to have a Sliver though. So he reveals Mike's Sliver. And it actually goes to the bottom of his deck because he doesn't have a Sliver to put it into play. So on his turn, so he's playing land and of course still feeding off of my herb orb over here, unfortunately. But that's okay. So he has a prismatic lens, which is nothing, and then hibernation sliver. So I could try to like use muddle to like transmute it and then like find a way to deal with hibernation sliver. But I've got Teferi and a Necro and I've got Artifact Ramp and I've got a Winter Orb in my hand. I don't really. I just want to. I think I did this wrong. What I should have done was forbid with buyback, and then I could have forced a will. But I decided I'm just. Oh wait, that's right. I didn't have the mana. So I just forced a will this using the thing and then hold forbid because forbid necro is a mere lock. Forbid necro orbs where he can only play one spell per turn is a lock. So I go ahead and I forbid that. He has no follow-up play. He's only got one card in hand after all. So again, I'm going to shuffle. And keeping Tomb with a Necro seems a little weird, but remember Tomb can tap for any color without dealing damage to me, so it's strictly superior to almost any other land in my deck because it gives me options. Because all my lands are Stadia Brasses that don't hurt. So any other special abilities they have just adds to their usefulness. So I go ahead and use Teferi and float some mana and get my commander down. So that now I can draw extra cards off of him. Plus, hey, there are slivers that have haste. There are also slivers that don't really have super relevant abilities, and having a blocker doesn't suck. And I'm going to refill my hand anyway, so I didn't really need to draw an extra card off Teferi right now. So I just necro down. I'm not over necroing, not at this life total. Look at that hand. How killer. So he buries a blasphemous act. It has almost nothing to do. If he has anything to do, chooses not to. So I'm going to go ahead and dig. Because I have Teferi to untap my lands, it's low cost for me to go ahead and do this. And so here are my options of keepable cards. Given that, I expect there's only two real answers in this, I think. If you're trying to figure out which two cards to take, I think one of them is 100% Gilded Lotus. The other one is your choice of Condescend or Demonic Tutor. Although some argument can be made for Workshop, but I think that would be incorrect. You could also possibly say Volt, because it's fairy, but again, it doesn't make as much sense to me. So I decided I'll just take Lotus Demonic. Lotus counter is also good, but I mean, I'm loaded on counters, so now I just want to kind of take the flexible option to either save myself if something unforeseen happens, and otherwise just end the game as fast as I possibly can. Alright, so upkeep, I will go ahead and take the extra card. And I was glad I did, because it's a Grim Monolith, which means that I can play Grim into Lotus very nicely. Tap the Lotus for blue, and then go ahead and Teferi. I try to hit as many lands as I can with the Teferi because of the Winter Orb, but I'm certainly going to hit the Grim and the Lotus and the Soul Ring, so that means I can only untap one land this turn, but that's fine. So I go ahead and fabricate into Metamorph. And I then just cast it full price because of Necro. Get myself a second Lotus. I use the Demonic Tutor with exactly 2 mana floating, and I go get Copy Artifacts and get myself a third Lotus. And if you're wondering why I'm just Lotus, because I've got Necropotence going. I just want a bajillion mana to do something. So I've already got 7 card hand every turn, so I just want to make sure that I can use those 7 cards and I'm not just staring at a bunch of cards in my hand that I can't play. So I go ahead and play Godless Shrine here, and because of how all the mana and stuff is going to work out this turn, and because I think it's okay for me to take the damage, I go ahead and do so. Basically, the reasoning was that from this position, I can cast... I was thinking that I could cast... if I have to, I can cast blue, blue 2, take 2 life, cast the forbid with 1 mana floating, and then I can back it up with a mana leak if my opponent has an instant that he's going to play before he empties my mana pool. I haven't got the sense that he has any counter spells whatsoever, but I might as well pay 2 life just to try to do that. Because I really want this Karn to resolve. I don't know what the last 2 cards are in this hand. But turns out it was an unnecessary precaution, and that's fine. I tag a Soul Ring, of course, because of Winter Orb. I'm not going to attack here. There's slivers with haste, and the game's on a razor edge anyway, as far as my life total goes, so I'm just not going to, I'm not going to do that. There's just absolutely no point in getting, like, twitchy with the commander pushing damage when I can just kick back and win the game, so. Real happy to see the rift there, because I'd like to get this thing off the board. But also, it's another hasted guys type situation. Of course, I'm concerned at this point that he could just draw direct damage and kill me, so I gotta watch out for that. And then the whole thing with the Ancient Tomb Clan, when he didn't have the counter spell, then, which is what I was gearing up for, he wasn't fighting a counter war over Karn. So at that point, I figured it was fine to necro down to where I'll just use the tomb for regular black mana or blue mana. And at this point, my opponent plays a land and realizes, as he says, he's locked out and wishes me a good game. And I say likewise. So we actually mulligan to 1, but then the opponent decided to be a little too nice on a Fact or Fiction, so I guess getting the Fact Fiction and giving him a chance was the right call. So when I facted for 5 cards instead of 3, like normal, or 2 if he had done a really good split, it basically, assuming he'd done a good split and I took 2 instead of 5, then he gave me 3 extra cards. So he took my mulligan to 1 and turned it into a mulligan for 4. And a mulligan for 4 was too much. I wasn't going to beat that, apparently. And so, this was a pretty cool victory. I hope that you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed puzzling how to pull this win out. Because it was a game that I was pretty sure had been lost, especially given how my opponent having a Soul Ring and then a free card drawing mana casting enchantment right off the bat. It seemed like I wasn't going to win that game. It seemed like it was unwinnable, so it felt really good to get the win there. And I hope you had fun watching it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.